But Chris, for the audience, man, can you introduce yourself to them real quick? We know who you are, but they might not. Can you please introduce yourself to them?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm Chris Pavlovski. I'm founder and CEO of Rumble. That's me.
So how'd you get started in tech? Obviously, you're wildly successful. You've been able to build a great platform that's rivaling, juggernauts in the field like a YouTube and Twitch, etc. How'd you get your start in tech?
Yeah, so I've been in this for over 2 decades. I was building websites out of my parents' basement. I started, I guess, in high school. That was the age where I kind of really started dabbling in the internet. And then it was it's actually a funny story because in 2004 or 2005, one of my good friends from high school, this is post high school now, sends me a link to a website. And at this time, I'm running funny video websites. And he was running actually one of the largest video websites on the internet called Zippy Videos at the time. And he sends me a link and he's like, check these guys out. They're going to dominate the space because Zippy, I can't afford the bandwidth costs anymore. And the link was, and this is before they were big, they weren't even, I think there was a ranker out there called Alexa, and he was a top 50 on Alexa, global websites, and YouTube was 15,000 at this time, and the link he sent me was YouTube. And I was like, shit. 2 years later, YouTube's getting acquired by Google, and they end up sucking up all the oxygen in the room as, Google started integrating them into their search engine and the mobile phones after that, and ended up kind of dominating, but dominating the video space post-acquisition of when Google bought them. You saw Dailymotion, Meta Cafe, you saw live video, Zippy Videos, they all basically, Break.com, they all kind of ceased to exist. And
was this in the mid-2000s?
This is 2007 to 2010. Yeah. Everyone kind of went belly up in the video space, and YouTube just took over the whole space, inside and out. They monopolized the whole thing, and they became the only real viable online video platform. So, fast forward to 2010 now. You probably remember the Maker Studios, the full screens, all the people that were managing talent on YouTube, the multi-channel networks, MCNs is what they were called at the time. And specifically, they ended up becoming this new ecosystem that was built on top of YouTube. And then I started to notice at that time that there was a lot of deprioritizing of the small creator, your friends, family, aunts and uncles, and the multi-channel networks, the full screens and the makers and all the big influencers, the corporations, the brands were getting all this attention, and they seemed to be getting prioritized on YouTube. So I thought there was an opportunity starting to emerge around 2010, 2011, and by 2013, I decided that I'm going to go all in on it and try to help the small creator. So I launched Rumble at the end of 2013 on the premise of bringing monetization and distribution in a fair way to all creators, regardless of their size. It was really kind of focused on that small creator, friends, family, aunts, uncles, viral videos, funny dog videos, etc. And we built a business at the end of 2013 on trying to help the small creator. And then, as time progresses, you get to 2020. The 2020 election cycle kicks in, and something dramatic starts happening. It was, I remember very vividly, because it was in the summer of 2020 that I got a phone call from the ranking member of the U.S. House Intel Committee. But to put this in perspective, I'm a Canadian.
Yeah.
Getting a call from U.S. a congressman, and then that's on the House of the House Intel Committee and the Gang of 8 member is like, holy shit, am I under investigation? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, I was freaking out. And I get a phone call from him, and he asks like a really simple question. He's like, Chris, if I bring my podcast to Rumble and I search for my name, am I going to find it? And I'm like, yeah, like thinking that, there's some censorship investigation going on in the house. And I'm like, absolutely. And he's like, okay, so we're going to bring it and we're going to see if that happens. And I'm like, okay. So, talking to my engineers, making sure if you typed in Devin Nunes, it's going to come up, Devin Nunes podcast. But yeah, it worked. And, this is the craziest thing, because you have an elected member of Congress, a Gang of 8 member, the ranking member of the House Intel Committee that's been on YouTube for 4 years prior to me speaking to him. And he's got like road signs in his district promoting his YouTube channel and his podcast on YouTube. He comes to Rumble, and within 2 to 3 months, he has like 200,000 to 300,000 subscribers on Rumble. Whereas on YouTube, in the 4 years that he was there, he has 10,000.
Wow.
So how is that possible? How is it that you can have 10,000 and you're like promoting in your district for 4 years, you've had your podcast on there, and you go to a different platform, and all of a sudden you go to Rumble and get 200,000 to 300,000 subs overnight, like in 2 to 3 months? That shouldn't happen. Not to an elected member of Congress, but that did happen. And that was that was kind of like the opening that we saw, is that there was a real opportunity here to kind of really like with what these other platforms were doing, we can now step in and like it almost goes back to the same premise of starting Rumble in itself, that the prioritization that was happening to big creators was now happening to the deprioritization that was happening to small creators is now happening to massive creators on YouTube. And they were deprioritizing them in some way, shape, or form. Because I remember I would go there and I would search Devin Nunes podcast, and you couldn't find it. When you go to Rumble, you find it. And this was like, this obviously led to like Dan Bongino coming onto the platform. And once he came on, everything changed.
He's huge.
He brought on at that time Diamond and Silk came on, Dinesh D'Souza came on. It was like a flood of creators after he came on. The floodgates opened, and within a year we had the 45th president of the United States on Rumble. And that happened, I think, in midsummer of 21. So I would say by the midsummer of 2021, we had a pretty good lock on the conservative world, in terms of the political world on Rumble. We had pretty much, everyone that you can think of. Obviously some weren't there, but a lot of them were there. And that sent us into this massive growth stage where we went from like 1 million monthly active users to like 30-40 million monthly active users in a span of like a year or two. We took in our first outside capital. We raised money from JD Vance's Narya Capital, Peter Thiel, and Colt Ventures, and even Vivek Ramaswamy was in that first round that we
shout out to him.
That we
a lot of
did.
people don't know he was like kind of one of the early investors in it.
And that was in mid 2021, May, I would say, April, May-ish time period. And then, fast forward to 2022, we end up going public in September of 2022 and a multi-billion-dollar market cap valuation. And that brings us to where we are today, here in the Fresh and Fit podcast studios.